Welcome to Savage Minds. I'm your host, Julian Vigo. Today's guest is Robert Pape, professor of political science and founding director of the University of Chicago Project on Security and Threats. He is the author of Bombing to Win, Air Power and Coercion in War, and he writes The Escalation Trap, hosted on Substack on the Iran War. I welcome Robert Pape to Savage Minds. Could you outline very briefly the links between various military challenges and the perception of their effectiveness? For instance, entrenched warfare in World War I to today's smart bomb era, and how each era's technology inflects public perception. We now know that the smart bomb has most definitely changed public perception of military effectiveness versus actual political outcomes.
The big differences between, say, World War I, World War II, and smart bombs today for the public, as the public experiences, is that we win wars with no cost. So that is what the public now expects. And the idea that we would lose 1,000 troops, much less 10,000 troops, much less 100,000 troops, is just beyond the ability of the public to even absorb at this point. This really dramatically shifted in 1991 with the 1991 Gulf War called Desert Storm, where Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. He had over 300,000 troops, battle-hardened troops in Kuwait, and we were expecting to lose something like 10,000 to kick those troops out because we brought all 10,000 body bags with us when we took our Army and Air Force to kick it out. But with the Precision Revolution, we fought a 39-day air war, a 4-day ground war, and kicked out Saddam Hussein, losing 147 U.S. troops in combat. That set the benchmark for where we are now. So America was engaged in forever wars. Those forever wars ended up 4,400 American soldiers died in Iraq over that roughly 20-year period. About 2,200 died in Afghanistan over that roughly 20-year period. And so you can see those deaths are horrible, but they're nothing like the 200,000 Americans who died in World War II. So just to give some parameters. And that is the big change between war during the earlier part of the 20th century and war today, which is why Donald Trump is really in a box, because he says Americans just don't have the stomach for it. Well, it's not just the stomach for taking Carg Island. Unless we are going to face an army literally on our borders, we are probably going to face the fact that Americans are not going to be willing to die in the thousands or what it would take to conquer Hormuz.
I would say that since Vietnam, we've seen a vast shift in public opinion about wars, especially on the right, and most fervently since 7 October and then the recent war in Iran. Why do strong powers frequently fail to achieve their political goals through prolonged air campaigns as seen in Vietnam and other conflicts?
Yeah, this is a very important, and this is what was the key question I wanted to answer when I did my dissertation at the University of Chicago, which became my book, Bombing to Win, which I have been, which led me to teach for the U.S. Air Force, and I've been talking about this and writing about this for years. The core issue is we didn't take seriously how the bombs would connect with politics. So we were expert at putting bombs on target. In fact, we would reduce the throughput of supply lines of the Ho Chi Minh Trail by 80%. But what we did not do was connect how the military action was going to either undermine political support for the war in North Vietnam or exacerbate it, make that political support grow. And that was the big mistake that I discovered that we made in the Vietnam War. That became my dissertation book, That's how I had tenure at the University of Chicago. And that is the big mistake we're making here. President Trump was focusing on putting a bomb on a target, killing a leader, and really not engaging with the question of would that produce more nationalist resistance on the part of the regime? Would that bring the regime and the society closer together, not further apart in Iran? And that was his critical error. And he's made that error multiple times. He made the same error with the blockade, and he's made the same error with the negotiation. So it continues to be the real problem as we go forward. Donald Trump is dealing with tactics, not strategy.
This war seems to have had a unifying power amongst Iranians themselves, which is quite a paradox, especially in light of your work on the concept of the escalation trap as per your publication on Substack. How do you define the escalation trap in the current geopolitical conflict?
A escalation trap occurs when a power, usually strong power, uses military force and achieves tactical success. Bombs hit targets, bombs kill leaders, for example, but then is strategically weaker, where the strategic position of the country with the tactical success goes down and becomes weaker. And that's exactly the escalation trap we were in Vietnam, where Lyndon Johnson would engage in military action, the position would get weaker and would move up the escalation ladder, looking for the rung of what we thought we had, escalation dominance, that would finally break the back of the North Vietnamese, and then we would strategically win. Well, that never happened in the Vietnam War over all those many years. And if you look at President Trump in this war, that's exactly the logic he said he was pursuing. When pushed to explain what he's expecting, for example, with more bombing or with more the blockade, he would say he's looking for to break the back, for the pressure that is going to produce strategic success. And in fact, he would often claim there was strategic success when that was not true. So we are in a classic escalation trap in the Iran war, and President Trump is still, to this day, trying to find a way to come out with an apparent victory. And it's just not been possible, and I don't think it's going to be possible. And the more he keeps saying that we have victory, we have control, Iranians do what we say, not the other way around, the more Iran is shutting the Strait of Hormuz. They just literally have done this in the last 24 hours. And this is continuing the escalation trap, not getting us out of the trap.
You're listening to Savage Minds. If you're enjoying the show, take a second to subscribe at savageminds.co. Feel free to comment below or drop us a line to share your thoughts. Support independent media today. Now, let's get back to it. Been able to voice its objection to Israel's bombardment of southern Lebanon and the genocide in Gaza in seeking de-escalation within the negotiations, while the response to Iran's reasonable request has been anything but reasonable or de-escalating.
That happened, yeah, Julian, that happened a week ago. So there's actually multiple red lines that are at issue, and I lay this out in my escalation trap post that I posted on Monday. It's called Getting the Framework Right, and I go through the specific red lines. So all the talk has been on Lebanon, and that is true. A week ago, Iran shut down Hormuz for a day over Lebanon, Israel's behavior there. What happened in the last 24 hours wasn't related to Lebanon. It was related to the arrangement to have ships pass through the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump was essentially trying to welch on the deal that he signed in Article 5 of the MOU, which establishes that those arrangements are only going to be determined by Iran in consultation with Oman, and that the ships that President Trump was trying to push through this, it's called the Southern Corridor, of the Strait of Hormuz violate that. They were not registering with the new administration that has been set up, and that is why Iran attacked that ship. Because they are establishing that they control Hormuz. Ships that pass must register with Iran, and they can only travel through this very specific routes that Iran establishes. Otherwise, Iran says they are not, quote, safe, unquote. And what that means is they will be attacked. So this is a different red line, and that's why I went through and did the analysis in detail of the different red lines of what to expect. We can know quite a bit about the parameters now that Iran will use, but we need to understand it from the perspective of power and from the perspective of the MOU, and that's what that Substack post does.
Right. However, I was actually referring to Lebanon. They made this move well over a month ago, discussing the need for Israel to stop the bombardment of southern Lebanon and the genocide in Gaza. Both were terms that I believe Iran has had on the table pretty much throughout. And this in turn resulted in friction within the negotiations, so it was reported, between Netanyahu and Trump, leading to pundits asking themselves who is controlling what is going on now. Is it Israel? Is it the U.S.?
That's right. Pundits are debating it constantly for months. But this really does, this is not the same sort of punditry. Notice it's the same pundits you have whether you're talking about getting a bill through Congress, domestic politics. And so they are, of course, very smart and they're very good on television. But this really requires, if we really want to understand the future, we really need to understand how the MOU, what it really means, the correct way to understand it in detail, not just in generalities. And that is important because Iran is holding America to the four corners of the MOU and for power reasons, and not just because of money reasons. And that is what is missing in the general conversation.
And more recently this week as well, Iran has made moves to have these aggressions recognized within the EU and every single GCC nation that gave space for the U.S. to take off from their air bases. So what do you think will come of this?
Yes, what you're seeing, Julian, is step by step, Iran is using the negotiations to gain power step by step. And it used the war to gain power by first of all solidifying its government. The IRGC now is a core part of the Iranian government more than ever. Number two, by gaining control of Hormuz. And now, number three, through the negotiations, is gaining power through enforcing the four corners of the MOU, and then going forward to make sure that all states, and you're just describing Iran's diplomacy with the European and the Gulf states, and it's not just general diplomacy. They're not just getting together and shaking hands. What Iran is doing is demonstrating it has sovereign control, and it's enforcing the MOU.
And you have characterized the recent U.S.-Iran deal as a catastrophic strategic defeat for Washington. What does this outcome signal about American credibility in the region now?
Exactly right, Julian. And the American credibility is declining fast.